Hare Krishna Mataji, you can start talking. For some reason I can't hear you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me? Okay, Jai. I can hear Master twice. Give me 1 second, one more second.
Can you hear me now? Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You can continue, Mataji. You are live.
Sure. So let's start with Jai Radha Madhava. I'm just starting. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरंगे राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये तप्त कांचन गौरंगे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतः सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Thank you all for joining in today's session. Today we'll be discussing about the great personality Dhruva Maharaj. I shall share the presentation. Sure. So basically, today's topic is lessons from the life and character of Dhruva Maharaj. So this is basically using the glories of Dhruva Maharaj. We have chosen this particular topic, and in this session we'll also be learning a lot of lessons from this great personality. So let's get started. First, let's start with understanding who Dhruva Maharaj is, and subsequently we'll also be highlighting the lessons that we are learning in this episode. So Dhruva was at the very age of 5. He had demonstrated an intense determination to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we also see in this episode that within 6 months of performing bhakti, he was able to see the Lord face to face. He was also a courageous spirited Kshatriya from the royal family of King Uttanpad. So his father was King Uttanpad, his grandfather was, as you can see, Swayambhu Manu. Great grandfather was Lord Brahma himself. His mother was Dhruva's spiritual guide, and Narad Muni was his spiritual master. And by interacting with Narad Muni, Dhruva actually became, or not just by interacting, by following in his footsteps, by following his instructions sincerely, he became a great personality or a pure devotee of the Lord. It is also mentioned that he ruled the earth planet for 36,000 years in Satya Yuga. From all this, we are able to understand that there is no age for performing bhakti. Anyone at any age can perform bhakti. And in this episode, we see that Dhruva was born of a low-class woman, and if he is able to perform bhakti, anybody can also perform. Anybody with any background can also perform bhakti. And we are discussing Canto 4, Chapter 8, and if possible, we'll cover Chapter 9 today. But in this course, what we have seen is Maitri Muni is explaining to Vidura about the children of Swayambhu Manu. And we see that Swayambhu Manu had 5 children. 3 of them were daughters, Devahuti, Prasuti, Akuti. And he had 2 sons, Uttanpad and Pratavata. So we had seen that in the previous chapters, Maitri Muni had discussed about the daughters of Swayambhu Manu, and while describing the lineage of Swayambhu Manu. And now in chapter 8, he specifically is describing about the lineage of Brahma. And Brahma had many sons, and including Kumara and Narada, who became Naishtika Brahmacharis. So we don't have any lineage through them. Brahma had a son called Adharma, and that's been discussed in these verses 2 to 4 in chapter 8. So Brahma had a daughter and a son, irreligion and falsity. And because this is, we are speaking about the lineage of Adharma, irreligion, right? So we find that there is an unnatural combination of sex life between brother and sister, as shown in the chart. So religion and falsity were born to Brahma, and from them were born bluffing and cheating, and from them were born greed and cunning, and from them were born anger and envy, and from anger and envy, Kali plus harsh speech was born, and from Kali and harsh speech, we find that death and fear were born. And from death, Mrityu and Bhiti, fear, we find that Yatana, excessive pain, and Niraya, hell, were born. Now, why are we discussing about death, fear, harsh speech, anger, envy, greed, cunning, all the negative elements, when we have to know all the good qualities from personalities? It is said that there is a falashruti in even hearing to such lineage of Adharma. There are 3 falashrutis. One is that one gets free from, one feels hatred towards such qualities by hearing to these things, and second is that one avoids them, and third is that one advances in piety. So that is why Maitreya Muni, as a matter of duty, he actually spells or just mentions these, and then he immediately switches to an enlivening topic, speaking about the lineage of Uttanapad, and he wants to describe about this great personality, Dhruva Maharaj. And we can see from the story of Dhruva Maharaj that he comes from lineage of Uttanapad. Uttanapad had 2 wives, namely Suruchi and Suniti, and Suruchi had a son called Uttama, and Suniti had a son called Dhruva Maharaj. Suruchi was young, favorite wife of Uttanapad, beautiful, whereas Suniti was also beautiful, was also chaste, but she was not considered favorite of Uttanapad. One day, Uttanapad was keeping Uttama on his lap, and he was seated on his throne, and Suruchi beside him. Suruchi was standing beside him, and seeing Uttama on the lap, little Dhruva seeing Uttama on the lap of his father, Uttanapad, Dhruva also wanted to sit on his father's lap. So he approached his father and asked if he could sit on his father's lap and throne. As he was coming closer to him, Uttanapad didn't welcome him. It is not that Uttanapad didn't like this little boy Dhruva. It's just because Suruchi was standing next to him. And we can see that Uttarpad, being the great emperor, who should be seeing all his citizens equally with equal vision, was not even able to see his two sons with equal vision. It was only because of his favoritism towards Suruchi. And Suruchi did not welcome Dhruva to sit on his father's lap. Instead, using the lenience that was provided, or using the favoritism that was provided to her by Uttanpad, she furiously blasts Dhruva and she says, "Dhruva, you are a small boy. You are unable to see the difference between me and your mother. The reason is, although you are son of Uttanpad, you don't qualify to sit on this throne or on your father's lap, because you were not born of my womb." And she mentions that if he had the desire to sit on his father's lap, he should go and pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that in his next birth, that he should be born in her lap, in her womb, in Suruchi's womb, and then he would get an opportunity to sit on his father's lap. So she says, your desire is impossible. And she says, you don't deserve to sit on your father's lap. So Dhruva was very aggrieved and disappointed by the words of arrogance and this egoistic talk by his stepmother. So he actually tries to, So Dhruva was very disturbed by the way Suruchi had talked to him, and he didn't expect that someone who's close to his father would talk to him like that. So he was, so he expected that at least his father would support him and help him or console him, but his father also didn't support, which added more to Dhruva's pain. And we see from this verse that because of the closeness that Suruchi had towards his father, Uttanpad. So she used that exalted position to actually reprimand Dhruva and ask him not to be seated. So we have to understand that our affiliation towards any exalted devotee should not make us look down on people. who do not possess the same stature or position. We have to see people equally, and we should be very respectful to people, even though they might not be of the same position or same stature. And that's being human, right? So Dhruva now was very much hurt, and he goes and he expected that either his father would be supportive or somebody. Basically, he wanted his father to support. So now that it didn't happen, and we might wonder how come a person who was so much fixed in false pride, like Suruchi, who had so much of arrogance, asked Dhruva to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. She was just actually making a show of her devotion to her husband. That's all. So but anyway, she had mentioned that, and now Dhruva was pained by three things. One is that his father had not consoled him or supported him when his stepmother had chastised him. Second, his stepmother was chastising him, and now Dhruva wouldn't know what to do. He was just stuck about, and he was very disappointed about how he was chastised, and he just became very angry, and he hissed like a snake. And we can see that it is the responsibility of the elders to behave well in front of such small children, because it is the consciousness that the elders carry that impacts the child at a very early age. If an elderly person exhibits envy and pride in front of small children, it will have a very negative impact on the children's mind. And now we can see it is because of the poor consciousness of Suruchi that she expressed her anger to little boy Dhruva instead of expressing it to even Suniti or to the king Uttanpad. So the thing to note here is that the consciousness of elderly people on these children will have a deeper impression, and it will also affect the overall thought process. So Dhruva Maharaj was angry, he was hissing like a snake, he ran from Suruchi's palace to Suniti's palace. Meanwhile, the palace residents who had observed or witnessed all these scenes had actually gone and informed Mother Suniti, as to what had happened to Dhruva, how Dhruva was insulted in Suruchi's palace. Suniti was already devastated because of her husband's neglectful behavior. Now, she was even more disheartened because her son has also got insulted by Suruchi, and her position was just like a tender creeper amidst a forest fire. So she couldn't tolerate it, and when she could not bear the pain, she saw her son Dhruva coming, crying and coming, and she embraced him, and he lifted Dhruva and kept him on her lap, and she consoled him, and she was even more concerned that Dhruva will actually take these negativities to his heart, and he might start having a revengeful attitude towards his stepmother. So she immediately, as a responsible mother and as a devotee of Lord Krishna, Suniti started giving good counseling to her son Dhruva. she mentions three things to her son. First is that she mentions, do not wish any ill fortune to any others, is what she first said. And she said, secondly, she said, whatever insults or reversals or difficulties we are facing in our life is because of our past misdeeds, and Suruchi is just an instrument for our own karma. So she asked Dhruva not to have any revengeful attitude towards Suruchi. And she also adds that whatever Suruchi said is true. She asked you to worship the Lord. And so she mentions that he is the only one who can fulfill all our desires. That is true. So Suniti was so noble that even in such a envious person's words, she was able to find the good thing, and she was able to teach her son the right direction. She was able to give the right direction to her son. Although she said with negative intention, so she took only the positive, and she only imparted the right knowledge to little Dhruva. Suniti said, I am only one mother who can give you love and affection, but if you pray to Lord Vishnu, he will give you the love of millions of mothers, and you will get the love and affection from the Lord in all the love and affection in the world you will be able to get. She also adds that Swayambhu Manu and Brahma became successful by worshipping the Lord. So we can see from these incidents that even in Brahma's generations, that there are some petty disputes in the family, and we have to understand that that is the nature of this material world. So Suniti asks Dhruva to take shelter of the Lord. Tameva vatsa rashna vritya vatsalam umukshubir nritya padabja padatim ananya bhave nija dharma bhavite manashi avishtabhya bhajashva purusham. So she says, O my dear son, take shelter of the Supreme Lord. People who seek liberation will take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord without any deviation while performing the prescribed duties of Varna and Ashrama. Establish that Supreme Lord Krishna within your heart and worship him. So that was the advice given by this noble mother to her devotee, to her son. Suniti was devotee of the Lord. She didn't have any grudge towards Suruchi or Uttanpad or Uttama. She was able to guide Dhruva in the right direction, in the direction of Bhakti. And she said, nobody other than the Lord would remove your distress. And because Suniti was following the process of Bhakti, she was able to tolerate the reversals in her lives, and she also had the maturity to deal with this envy and hate in an easier manner. And her heart was filled with forgiveness and tolerance. And she also asked her son to take shelter of the Lord Krishna. And she considered whatever difficulties that they were facing was only because of their past deeds. Yes, sometimes we might need to correct people. We might need to rectify people who are doing wrong, but it should not be done because of grudge or hatred. And we may hate the sin, but we should not hate the sinner. Here, Suniti did not have any hatred towards Suruchi. as we saw. So she had a good attitude towards Suruchi, but then encouraged her son to go in the right direction. So Dhruva, who was instructed by his mom, was only able to take the point where she says that take help or worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he is the one who will be able to help you. So he was able to take that point, whereas he was not able to take that it was only because of his past deeds that he has to go through this. But he had this revengeful attitude towards Uttama, whom was sitting on his father's lap where he wanted to sit, and also he was having a revengeful attitude towards Suruchi, who had chastised him and asked him not to sit on his father's lap. So Dhruva, with all his desires, leaves to the forest. He leaves home, and understanding little Dhruva, Lord Vishnu actually directs Narada in the direction of Dhruva. Narada Muni, a great devotee of the Lord himself, was directed from within by the Lord. And Narada Muni had approached Dhruva when he was going to the forest, and he asks Dhruva, what is the matter? Why has he left home at such a young age? And he also mentions that forest is not a place for little boys. There are wild animals there, there are wild insects. The weather will be very terrible, and how could such a boy who has lived in the palace for so many, for some years at least, right? So he's 5 years old. So how could he leave his home and go to such a place to perform austerities? And who will be there to take care of him? And so he instructed Dhruva to take honor and dishonor in the right sense. And he said, you should be satisfied with what you have. And an intelligent person is satisfied with whatever comes. It is very difficult to satisfy the Lord. He also mentions that many yogis who had followed in his footsteps had failed miserably, and they were unable to satisfy the Lord. So in all this, Narad Muni was testing Dhruva's determination, and we could see that Dhruva listened to whatever Narad Muni had said, and he was listening, and Narad Muni mentions a lot of things. He says that it is very difficult to satisfy the Lord, and he also mentions that he should give up his endeavor and go back home. And in verse 33 he says, Yashya Daiva Vihitam Satena Sukradukhayo Atmanam Toshayan Dehi Tamasaha Param Rakshati. He says, one who endures any condition can cross the darkness of nescience. So he asks Dhruva to accept whatever is sanctioned by the Lord, and only then he will be satisfied in his life. And he also mentions who will not suffer miseries. And this verse 34, Gunadikam mudam lipsed anukrosham gunadamat maitrim shaman annichem na taper abhibhuyate. He said, Narad Muni explains how one will not experience material miseries. And he also mentions that when we deal with other people, like 3 kinds of people in this world, if there are only 3 kinds of people, one, when we meet people who are more qualified than us, we have to be happy. When we meet people who are less qualified than us, we have to be compassionate towards them. And when we meet people who are equal to us, then we make friendship with them, not envy them. We should not hate them. So when we deal with people like this, then there will be no miseries. Like this, Narad Muni started teaching detachment, maturity to little Dhruva, and but Dhruva was fixed on his goal. He had an ambitious goal, He wanted to have a kingdom much bigger than his grandfather, much bigger than his father. He wanted a kingdom much bigger than his grandfather. So we can see that he was determined and he was unable to accept the words of Narad Muni. And he mentions to Narad Muni, I can't accept your advice. He was being direct and he was being honest. So we can see Dhruva's specific quality that is coming up. He's being direct. He's not hiding anything. And he's being honest. Sorry, Narad Muni, like you are such a great person, but you are showing me the path of peace and it is suitable only for Brahmanas. Whereas I am a Kshatriya, my heart is pierced by the words of Suruchi. Please provide me an honest path to achieve my goal. And you are the only one who can guide me to fulfill my desires. Because you travel all over the world and you know much more than me. So like this, he requests Narad Muni in the right direction. And Narad Muni was also not upset seeing the boy. People like Narad Muni are great personalities. And they can in fact think, oh, this little boy is not respecting me, he's not listening to me, how can I help? No, he understands how much he is hurt, he understands how much determined the small boy is, and he also finds that this boy is interested in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though he has material desires and material he's looking for material prosperity, but he still has the intention to see the Lord. And Narad Muni knows this concept of where it is not that people will be with pure-hearted come and start bhakti. He knows that bhakti can be started from anywhere, even with people who have material desires. People will come to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he encourages Dhruva from whatever stage he is, and he accepts Dhruva's honesty, and he actually guides him happily, and he encourages Dhruva and he shows him the path. He knows that bhakti is so glorious to purify this material contamination in the heart of this little boy, and by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he knows that this material contamination will go away and he will become purified. So Narad Muni starts instructing Dhruva on the process to attain this goal. So Narada is pleased and he gave advice, and he recommended Narada to follow the path of bhakti and worship. He allowed Dhruva, or he asked Dhruva to worship Lord Vasudevaya. And Lord Vasudevaya. And this is the only way he could achieve his goals. So he requests Dhruva to go to the forest of Madhuvan, and he is asking Dhruva to reside on the banks of Yamuna. Because he knows that the Lord resides eternally in the banks of Yamuna, and he can become purified by staying there. And Narad Muni also teaches Dhruva on Ashtanga Yoga, and he also teaches him the breathing exercises like Rekaka, Puraka and Kumbhaka, by which he can gradually control the life air and the mind and the senses, and then subsequently he can be free from his material contamination. He also teaches Dhruva to meditate upon the Lord's forms, to meditate on Lord's forms. So that's actually discussed from verse 45 to 51. Some of the beautiful descriptions of the Lord's form is about how the Lord can give causeless mercy towards his devotees, how joyful the Lord's face would be, and his glance, and how beautiful his nose and eyebrows would be, and how beautiful his forehead would be. So he goes on, and how attractive limbs, how youthful the Lord is, and how attractive limbs the Lord would have, and how his lips and eyes would be like the rising sun, so on and so forth. And while he mentions about the Lord's youthful and attractive limbs, he mentions about this verse, Tarunam Ramaniyangam Arunoti Kshanadharam Pranatta Shrayanam Pranam Sharanyam Karunarnavam. So like this, he asked Dhruva to meditate on the form of the Lord, which would eventually free him from the material contamination and enrich him with the highest bliss. He also taught Dhruva to do mantra japa, and he also gave him the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and he also asked him to choose a place, and he also asked him to choose the right ingredients to worship the Lord. He knows that this boy is going to worship the Lord in the forest, so he asked Dhruva to make the Lord with earth and water, and he requests him to offer flowers, some berries, some water from the river Yamuna. So like this, according to the circumstance, Narad Muni encourages him to perform service to the Lord. And by doing the devotional services, by performing such meditation on the form of the Lord, he said he will eventually be able to control his mind, and he will be able to be peaceful. So, and as a result, what would happen? He mentions that the Lord would be able to bless him based on his desire if he was successful in performing his austerities. And he could achieve the special liberation if he had satisfied the Lord and by performing bhakti. So like this, Narad Muni encourages Dhruva to go to Madhuvan, and when Dhruva goes in the direction of Madhuvan, Narad Muni goes to meet Uttanpad. Narad Muni goes to meet Uttanpad and wanted to discuss about his welfare. Uttanpad now regrets about his dealings with little Dhruva. He said, yes, he was honest. Uttanpad, coming from the great lineage, he understands that what is the purpose in hiding his mistakes, right? So he was genuine, he was straightforward, he accepts that he has committed his mistake, and he makes sure that he will not repeat it again. So he accepts that, yes, I was henpecked and I was merciless, and I didn't protect my son, but now I'm worried that my son is in the forest, and I'm concerned about his protection, and he might be hungry, and he accepts that he was very cruel and being conquered by his wife Suruchi. And Narad Muni also informs about Dhruva's safety to Uttanpad. He said Uttanpad not to be aggrieved of his son, because Narad Muni mentions that Dhruva has taken the most difficult tasks even for the demigods, and he says that he would be able to perform it very nicely and he will come out success. And he also mentions that he would bring great reputation for you, King Uttanpad. Now Uttanpad, hearing all this, he was even more saddened, and he started giving up his interest in wealth and his kingdom, and now he started thinking more about his son. While Uttanpad is thinking about his son, and now Dhruva is performing severe austerities, and he is performing severe austerities to reach towards his goal. Dhruva now took the bath in Yamuna at Madhuvan, and he observed fasting and he worshipped the Lord as per Narad Muni's instructions. Now, Dhruva performed severe austerities. First month, he would only take Abhitaha fruits once in 3 days only. And in the second month, he used to just take dry grass and leaves, that too once in 6 days. And in the third month, he used to just drink water once in 9 days. And in the fourth month, he used to just take air once in 12 days. By the fifth month, Dhruva controlled his breath and mind and stood on one foot and meditated on the Lord's form. He was able to take Lord in his heart and he was able to worship him sincerely. And now, while he was in deep meditation and worship of the Lord, the earth started trembling, and he was able to push the earth down with just his big foot or big toe. And now the demigods started suffocating. They started becoming worried. What's happening to this planet? Let's go reach out to the Lord, asking for direction, asking for protection. So they go to Lord Vishnu and ask, what's happening? Lord, we are suffocating. We are not. It's not normal for us to have the suffocation. So what's happening? The Lord reassured to the demigods that it is because of the little Dhruva performing so much austerities and taking the Lord refuge in his heart and worshipping him, that all these things are happening. And the Lord ensured that he would go and meet Dhruva and bless him. So saying, the Lord goes to meet Dhruva. The Lord appears and empowers Dhruva to speak when he meets Dhruva. So when the Lord comes to meet Dhruva, when Lord comes to meet Dhruva, Dhruva was actually in deep meditation, and he was perturbed. Something was happening within him. So he was like, I don't know, this is not normal. I've so far been able to meditate on the Lord's form peacefully, but something is happening. So he was unable to continue his meditation. So he opened his eyes just to see the Lord in front of him. So he was very glad and he expresses ecstatic symptoms after seeing the Lord. He was agitated and he wanted to glorify the Lord in his words, but he knew he was not capable. But the Lord, understanding his desire, Lord understands the desire of everyone from within their heart. So the Lord blesses Dhruva with his conscience on his head, and he empowers little Dhruva to speak wise words. So like this, because of the encouragement, because of the empowerment, Dhruva was able to speak nice words in glorification of the Lord. And there we are able to see Dhruva's prayers. And Dhruva, as we discussed, Dhruva manifests ecstatic symptoms when he saw the Lord in front of him. He gets the blessing from the Lord by use of his conch. And he also got the words to describe the Lord. And he understood the knowledge of the Lord and the Jiva. And hence he starts offering his prayers. So Dhruva Maharaj starts by offering his obeisances to the enlivener of the senses. And he starts off his prayer, Yantoha pravishya mama vacham imam prashuptam sanjivayati akhila shakti tarasvadamna anyamscha hascha charana shravanatvagadim prana namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. So he was like, the Lord is the one who enlivens the senses of his devotees with his internal energy. Swadamna, that same energy as external potency, Maya Khayaya engages others in material activities of sense enjoyment, and their senses become material senses. Thus, things are manifested differently to different people. So he also mentions that the Lord is the only shelter. How can a learned one forget his lotus feet? And he also mentions foolish people worship you with motives. He also adds himself in the list where he also has material motives while he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he also explains the superiority of bhakti. And he also explains how he can derive bliss by performing bhakti. The first thing that he emphasizes is, let's go through this verse. Ya nivritis tanu gatam tava pada padma dhyanad bhavaj janakata shravanena vashyat cha brahmani swa mahimani apinatha mabhut kim tva antakashi lalitat pathatam vimanat. So he mentions about how and why bhakti is superior, because he is mentioning that one can derive bliss just by surrendering on or meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord. Tava pada padma dhyanad, by meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, hearing your glories from pure devotees, bhavaj janakata shravana. So all these things are far beyond merging into the effulgence or Brahmananda. So he is glorifying the Lord, and he is also emphasizing on wanting to have association of devotees. Bhaktim muhu pravrahatam tvai me prashango bhuyad ananta mahatam amala shayanam enan ja sholbanam guru vyashanam bhavadvim nishe bhavad guna kathamrata panamataha. So he is like, it's going to be 8:30, but we'll just continue for a few more minutes, and we'll be able to cover the qualities of Dhruva Maharaj, and we'll be able to see what he is getting from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it's the result that he has obtained by performing severe austerities, right? So let's go through for some more minutes. And so he requests and he says that devotees need to have the association of the Lord, or the pure devotees of the Lord. And in that, he says, because of that, by associating by pure devotees of the Lord, he would be able to get rid of this material contamination, and he would be able to get rid of his material madness by hearing to the nectar of the qualities and the pastimes of the Lord. Because he says pure devotees only discuss about the Lord, that's one thing. And another thing is they do bhakti constantly, and they share the nectar of his qualities and pastimes. And so like this, he is saying that one can take the association of devotees. And he also understands that by the association of devotees, that he can practice detachment as well. And previously he had never experienced seeing the supreme form, so he offers respects to the Garbhodaksha Vishnu. He understands the difference between the Lord and Jiva, and he also understands the qualities of Brahman. Now he understands that it is unlimited, blissful and changeless, and he also understands that he is the merciful maintainer, and the Lord is the one. The Lord's eagerness to give mercy is uncomparable to anyone. And so like this, he glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead the first time he's happened to see him face to face. And the Lord now starts responding to Dhruva. Lord mentions, "Oh Prince, now your desire, and I award you with what you want along with Prema." He says, "May you have the three worlds, Dhruvaloka, the greatest place. May you rule with Dharma for 36,000 years. And yes, your brother Uttama, he understands the revengeful nature within Dhruva's heart. So he mentions of how he can take revenge of Uttama and Suruchi. So he says, your brother Uttama will die in future, and searching for Uttama, Suruchi will come to the forest, and she will also get engulfed in the fire, and she will also die. And so now Dhruva is understanding what he has got, and after performing such sacrifice, now Dhruva has been given his kingdom. Dhruva has been given, he was able to take revenge on Uttama and Suruchi. Now, Lord mentions that while enjoying this world, you will also remember me. At the end of the life, you will also come to me. So Lord assures this, and you will go to my planet, Dhruva Loka. As Dhruva looked onto the Lord leaves on his Garuda. Now Dhruva actually regrets. Now Uddhava is asking to Maitreya Muni, why? Dhruva had got whatever he wanted. He had got his Dhruva planet. He's got so much material prosperity now. He's been able to take revenge on these two people, Uttama and Suruchi. Now why is he still sad? And to that Maitreya Muni explains, see, Dhruva's displeasure is because he had with great determination worshipped and wanted to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dhruva actually understood that the Lord had identified that he had the material desire, and he had given him the material prosperity along with prema. So he was feeling regretful and ashamed to having having the Lord understood, having the Lord to understand his bad qualities. He felt ashamed, and he was actually thinking, I was able to see the Lord. Instead of asking him for bhakti and instead of asking him for such nice qualities, I was actually asking him for some broken pieces of glass. So he felt very disheartened, and he was lamenting that I attained the rarest, but I still fell by asking material prosperity, and I desired just for perishable things. And even Narad Muni had guided me in the right direction, and I was unable to take the right directions in the right time. I was under the Maya's influence. My mind was only fixed on taking revenge of the people who had insulted me, and I prayed for useless things, and I wanted material prosperity. So on and so forth. He started lamenting like this. And because the Lord has also left now, and we can see that he didn't want material prosperity now. He just wanted to see the beautiful Lord face to face again. As we can see that devotees are just satisfied by the service to the Lord, and they don't want anything more. And now Dhruva leaves the forest and goes back home. And as soon as Uttanpad hears that his son is coming back to his kingdom, Uttanpad couldn't believe, and he arranges for a big reception, and he asks all the palace residents to decorate the palace and arrange for a big welcome ceremony. And he eagerly goes out of the city, inviting his ministers and elders and to welcome his little son, who has actually performed so much austerities, who had actually got a glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Suniti also was accommodative enough. She actually accommodated Suruchi and Uttama to come in her palanquin. How did this happen? After Narad Muni had spoken to Uttanpad, Uttanpad had turned the direction of favoritism from Suruchi to Suniti. Now Suniti was given all the preferences, and her good qualities were appreciated by Uttanpad, and so she was actually given a palanquin. And now Suniti gave that she didn't have any grudge on them, but allowed Suruchi and Uttama to come on the palanquin to welcome her son. Now Uttanpad meets Dhruva, and he appreciates or he touches Dhruva, he embraces him and he touches his head and smells his head again and again. And Dhruva also offered his respects to his father and offered respects to Suruchi, his stepmother, and Suruchi also embraced him and blessed him to live longer. As we can see, how did this change suddenly happen? The normal or the natural tendency for anybody is to give respects to the good qualities of people, and in that sense, everybody respects a devotee. It is compared to water. When poured, it takes the downward direction because that's the natural tendency of water. Just like that, everybody has a natural tendency to observe good qualities and appreciate them. So, like that, even Suruchi followed that and respected Dhruva. Now, Uttama and Dhruva had embraced each other, and Suniti, this great noble mother who had directed Dhruva, is now very happy, and she shed tears and bathed Dhruva with tears and milk, just like how an Abhishek ceremony would happen while he while enthroning the king, right? So that sort of Abhishek ceremony she herself did to her son, which indicated that Dhruva will become the king for the throne, and people praised Suniti for having directed her son in such a nice direction, and everyone was praising Dhruva as he returned to the city. So we can see in these verses from 54 to 64 how the palaces were decorated with banana leaves and betel trees, how they draped mango leaves like a string of pearls, how they decorated the gates and walls, how the streets and the watch towers were sprinkled with sandalwood water, and how the chaste women offered blessings to Dhruva, little Dhruva. And Dhruva thereafter lived in his father's palace. And to describe his bedding, it was as white as the foam of a milk. And the walls were made up of marbles and with valuable engravings in them. And pleasant gardens filled the trees from heaven. So like this, it was on, and Dhruva was able to lead a very happy life. And this was as a reward that he got for all the austerities that he did and for meeting the Lord face to face. So now Uttanpad found out how respectful and how Dhruva was liked by all the citizens of his city, and how the ministers recommended him for being the king. So under all this influence, Uttanpad actually made Dhruva the king, and he retires and goes back to the forest. And this shows how in those days the saintly kings were not attached to the kingdom or the wealth, but when time came, they enthroned the right person to rule the planet, and they went in search of the Lord, and that's what we're seeing here. Thank you everybody for attending today's session. Thank you for helping me also go through these chapters and finding the lessons from such a great personality. Hare Krishna. Thank you.